Hello, everyone. I'm Denton Davidson, senior editor for Gold Derby. I'm joined by Cindy Mollo, the Emmy-nominated and American Cinema Editors Award-winning editor of Ozark on Netflix. And Cindy, first of all, congratulations on this final season of Ozark. It's been such a huge success for Netflix and the entire cast and crew. What has that been like for you to sort of see that all come to a close now?
It's been really fun. It's the first time I've ever been like a completist where I've done the first episode of a series and the finale. And I didn't anticipate how cool that would feel. And the audience has been so excited to have these last seven drop. And I think it was fun for them because they just watched the first seven of season four. And then just 2 months later, they get this wrap up, and it seems like the audience has been really satisfied. So that's gratifying.
What do you remember about making that final cut?
Um, there were a number of days where I would finish watching dailies on a scene and think to myself, that's my last scene with such and such a character. That's my last scene with that character. It was oddly emotional because, most of the time when you're working on a series, you're doing one episode in the middle of the season, or even if you're doing the first or last, there's another season, or you hope there's another season. But this was so definitely the end of a really positive experience that I think for the first time in my career, I really felt grateful every day and didn't take any of those last days for granted.
What do you think it was about Ozark that struck such a chord with people? I mean, it's been such a success. It's not your first. I mean, you worked on Deadwood and Mad Men. What is it about Ozark, do you think, that really got people to love it?
I think there's a really successful formula, and I've actually worked on two other series that sort of followed this formula, Homicide and Oz. In the first seasons of those shows, you're with a character who's being introduced into the world. So in Homicide, it's someone who's joining the police force from the mayor's security detail, and you learn about police detective work through him. And in Oz, it's a guy who seems like you or I. He has an accident and kills a girl, and he ends up in prison. Well, here you start out thinking the Byrdes are like any other family, especially because it's Jason Bateman and Laura Linney, two actors we know well from other projects, but we don't think of them as playing criminal types. And so we learn about this world through them, assuming that they're just like us. And over 4 seasons, we learn that they are very much not like us in both good and bad ways. And so that was a really satisfying experience to kind of go through that journey.
And what is the editing collaboration like on Ozark? Because people direct certain episodes. How do you figure out which ones you want to take the lead on? And then how do you split those up?
Well, I don't really have a choice in that we alternate each season. Whoever finished the season before starts the next season. And Vix Patel and I and Heather Goodwin Floyd were editors on the season from the beginning. So you kind of know who's starting off. The 4th season was unusual because instead of 10 episodes, we had 14, and we had some episodes that were directed by individual directors instead of directors taking a block. So this season was a little different, and we also knew it would air in 2 chunks, be dropped in 2 chunks. So going in, I knew I was doing some episodes in the middle, and then I knew I was doing the first one of the last 7, but I didn't know right away that I was doing the finale because we had some directors' schedules shift around before Jason was definitely going to direct the finale. So it's the interesting thing about television. You don't have a choice always of what episodes you edit, and therefore you don't know which scripts you're going to be working on. So there's a lot of randomness to it, but on a show like Ozark, you never lose.
Yeah. And how much leeway are you given in that editor's suite? I mean, you're given all this footage, right? So you're kind of trying to ruffle through it. How much do you get to say, this is the cut I want? And then how much is Jason in there saying, no, I know this happened and I want this. What is that
Well,
going on at all?
Yeah, to some extent, but maybe not exactly that way. It's a very collaborative process, and in my editor's cut, I try to put together the best choices that I see. I've also now worked with Jason. I guess this was our 5th episode together, so I know his taste. And physically, I was in the office with Chris Mundy, the showrunner. He was down the hall, so I approach the editor's cut with my own taste and my own choices, but I can always ask a question like, hey, what do you think of this? And how about that? So I put my best foot forward in that editor's cut. Jason comes in, and in many cases, he has a very definite idea of how he wants the scene to be put together. And in many cases, that's obvious from looking at the footage. You know, you go, oh, this looks like the kind of shot he would like to start on, or he shot coverage, but I think he really wants this to be all in one. So let me see if that master shot holds up. So you put those things together, and there'll always be a number of scenes where he has a definite idea. And then there are some scenes where he might say, oh, that's interesting what you do there. I thought I would, maybe take all the coverage from the other side, but I see what you're doing. Let's either go with your way, my way, or a third way. Like there is collaboration. But there's also a lot of respect for what the editor does in that first pass, because we've all been with the show, since the beginning.
How many times do you find like a treasure that you weren't expecting in like a reaction shot? I mean, are you getting a lot of those? Like, is that sort of the joy in it sometimes, is like looking for those small moments that you might not expect, that only happen once, that aren't repeated?
I love those things. And when I watch dailies, I always make a note of them. If there's something that's a little different. These actors are so good that you get maybe the first couple of takes, they're kind of finding their rhythm, but then they are pretty much locked in. And but I'm always looking for the serendipitous, oh, wow, she smiled when she said that. Whereas in all the other takes, she had a very stone face, and that smile is kind of chilling. I'm going to go with that. So always looking for those kind of moments.
And how long is that process of just editing one episode? I mean, it seems like a daunting task. How long does that take?
It's always hard to say, because we shoot for I think it was 12 or 14 days an episode, maybe 12 typically. Most directors do a block, so it's 24 days of shooting 2 episodes. And then I get, it's all broken up, so I never think of it as like one big chunk of time, but I'll get 4 days for my editor's cut, where I've been piecing the show together as they've been shooting, but now I see it all together, and I might alter some performances. I might change some music that I thought was right when I first started cutting a scene, but then you get the whole show put together and this beat doesn't feel quite right, so you make adjustments. Then I work for 4 days per episode with the director. Because Jason's a director and an executive producer, we'll do a few more days because we roll right into his cut with Chris Mundy. And, we had some things on this episode that were a little bit on the finale that were a little bit of a challenge, and we bounced back and forth between ideas. And the lovely thing about working with the star director EP is that you can indulge those choices and compare versions, and then feel like when you lock picture, you've really gone with the best moment.
What was your favorite scene or episode from this final season of shooting that you had, that you look back and think, that was just fun to be a part of, or challenging?
I for some reason in my memory now, I think of all the great moments when Wendy lied, just outright lied to someone's face. And she's such a good actor, and she plays that kind of, I don't want to say uber sweetness, because that will sound like, that sounds like bad acting, but she can play the sweet Midwestern woman who you would never think would do anything wrong, but because you just saw her do the bad thing in the previous scene, you know she's lying. And so I think of when she lied to Ruth about Javi's gone to Mexico for 3 months, but don't worry, we'll help you get him when he comes back. And then when Ruth confronts her in the restaurant at the end and says, you said he was gone. And Wendy just looks at her stone-faced and says, I lied. And I love that. And yet in the same scene, sometimes she was outraged in that same scene at the dinner in the restaurant that Marty knew that Ruth was in Chicago and never said anything. Like the lies upon lies, I think, are what I delight in the most. And then in a scene at the top of the next episode, the outrage that the other person lied or that did something behind someone's back. I just laugh. I think, I laugh like I'm cutting a comedy because it's just people doing the most human things possible and lying to each other about it.
Well, Cindy Mollo, congratulations on all of your work on Ozark. We're wishing you and the entire cast and crew the best of luck at this year's Emmys. And thank you so much for chatting with Gold Derby.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your interest as always.